All right. So tomorrow, and I know this is a great way to open up a video, but tomorrow I want to talk about the running back dead zone. My drafts are coming up next weekend. Roster cuts, I believe, are Tuesday. So if you haven't drafted yet, you're probably getting ready to draft. And so this is the last of the tinkering that we can do for our draft prep before was probably next weekend likely to be a huge draft weekend for fantasy. So in this case, what kind of struck me was the idea of how to miss and how to hit on fantasy. Like there are good misses. There are guys that we can look back on and we can go, the tea leaves said X, and I used the right process and I just missed because at the end of the day, fantasy football is kind of gambling. And on the other hand, like when I hit, I don't want to sit there and go like, well, I got lucky. I just randomly threw out a fishing line in the 6th round and I got Josh Jacobs because that's what we're looking at. We want to find, the 2022 Josh Jacobs. We want to find the 2021 Cooper Kupp. That's how we win leagues. So, what are the variables that we're looking for when we try and find the guy who has his value driven down? Because if everybody knew the outcome, we'd be drafting that way. But we have the cheat sheet to say, hey, I should go spend a little bit more capital on this guy and get him earlier. And I am starting to get a little higher on James Cook as long as I can get him at the right value, because he's got this pathway to be Travis Etienne from last year. And Travis Etienne from last year was kind of steamed up a little bit, I think, into like the 3rd or 4th round. That's where he's going this year. But if James Cook stays, outside of certain ranges, and I believe on Underdog, they have James Cook going 73rd overall, running back 23, which may be a touch high for me, but I'm very risk averse when I come to wanting to get people. On ESPN, they have James Cook ranked 24 overall, or 61 overall, running back 24. And if you've listened to me in the past, I think this year running backs are the unicorns because there's a lot of breakout wide receivers. There are very few high-end running backs that we can throw our hat at and say, hey, this is a guy I'm going to miss on, because all the smoke and mirrors say this guy's a good bet. There's only 8 bell cows now that Josh Jacobs is coming back. So if you're in a 10-man league, there's going to be 2 guys that are shit out of luck. And if you're in a 12-man league, there's going to be 4 guys that have missed the train. So those 2 guys or those 4 guys have to go make up that production someplace else in the draft. Otherwise, they're going to be behind the entire year. And a guy like James Cook is a good example because, to put this bluntly, Travis Etienne is running back 11 on ESPN. Underdog, has him, I think, actually a little bit higher. He's running back 12, actually, is a guy back. And the thing is, like, if you're going to draft a guy like Travis Etienne at running back 11, running back 12, that's where he's going to finish. There's almost no variable for Travis Etienne to finish above that ranking unless he starts having those 55-point Joe Mixon games that are just like ridiculously hard to predict. Travis Etienne, this isn't just like, hey, a Tank Bigsby versus Jamarcol Hasty versus Travis Etienne thing. This is a, hey, if this offense has more passing yards, they have less of a need for Travis Etienne to do anything. Like it's going to be very difficult to project an offense where Trevor Lawrence throws for 5,000 yards and Travis Etienne has 1,500 yards rushing with 10 touchdowns and rushing work or receiving work out of that uptick from Trevor Lawrence. It's just a very hard pill to swallow, where it's like, okay, all these things break right, and the Jaguars do all these things, and their defense is so bad that they need to continue to score points. That's just very unlikely. As opposed to James Cook down here at the bottom, it's more likely that James Cook can, as I try and find Travis Etienne last year, it's more likely that James Cook can have 1,100 yards rushing on 220 carries, 5 touchdowns, and add an additional 35 yards or 35 receptions for 316 yards receiving in that Buffalo Bills offense. This is not a very difficult pill to swallow, that James Cook can do what Travis Etienne did last year. It's not. And especially if we factor in Tanks Bigsby, now we factor in JaMycal Hasty, those 5 rushing touchdowns that Etienne had last year, that he was able to get into the end zone on his own. Well, now with James Cook, we can go, well, now we have Murray and Harris vulturing touchdowns at the goal line along with Allen, and Bob's your uncle. James Cook is Travis Etienne, but we're getting him at a 2-round discount. Now, the other thing with James Cook is if he fails, and we're paying the tax to go get James Cook, and I would be okay with going up and getting James Cook, and even in the 5th at this point, I think that's fine. You're probably the 6th is probably a little bit better. It would be great if you could get him in the 7th, but you're going to have to pay to get this guy, because at the worst, he's probably going to be an RB3 that you can work into your flex a little bit. And he can give you some replacement work. But if you're getting him in like the 5th, 6th round to be an RB3, and you can plug him into that flex role in a year where there's not going to be a lot of running backs that you could probably replace him with, that's not an entirely horrible pick, provided that you're constructing your roster and your lineup the right way. So these are the things that we look at. And so when I talk about like, hey, there's a lot of breakout wide receivers, when we look at like a Drake London, there are things to not like about Drake London. It's going to be a low volume passing offense, and that's not something I really like. And there's going to be targets that get funneled away from Drake London to Kyle Pitts and Bijan, and even what's his name? The wide receiver 2 that was with the Raiders last year. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point being that as much as I like Drake London and I want to go get him, the tea leaves are also telling me, hey, he could disappoint. So he's a rough one. So on ESPN or probably even Underdog, a guy like him is like, hey, if I can get him at value, if I can run him as a flex, that's good. But when I have to start steaming him up to a higher place, knowing that the tea leaves are saying don't go get this guy, those are things that we're looking for. Because like with Josh Jacobs last year, the only real indicator that Josh Jacobs was going to be what he was is he had 50 receptions, and Josh Jacobs can kind of be looked at similar to Ramondre this year, where with Ramondre having the 69 receptions, we can kind of say, hey, they're going to have this higher receiving role as a floor. So maybe if we get a little bit of bump in the rushing and the rushing touchdowns, now we have a league winner. And those are things we're looking at. Now, Ramondre is kind of steamed up into like the fourth round. If he goes in the 3rd, he really hurts. But those are the things that we're looking for, because if we just take a random guy like a Mike Evans going earlier on ESPN than James Cook, am I right on that 61? Yeah, 58. The road for Mike Evans to be a league winner is almost non-existent, just like Travis Etienne. There's almost no way that Mike Evans is going to steam up and have 1,500 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns in that Tampa offense. The tea leaves are going, how does this happen? How does Mike Evans have the football fall in his hands, 10 times, and a receiver or defender falls down and he's able to get that touchdown? Like, how does that happen an inordinate amount of times, just other than just being like random chance? Same thing with Tyler Lockett. Everybody loves Tyler Lockett this year, but like, I don't want to go buy a guy to be a wide receiver 3, fringe RB or wide receiver 2 at any point in the draft. Like, tell me how Tyler Lockett wins me my league. He's great for someone to throw into their lineup because they got him in the 9th round, and they're like, look, I got a wide receiver, a fringe wide receiver 2 in the 9th round. That's great. But I can also go down and go like, Jordan Addison is going to be that same guy. Jordan Addison can have the same production as Tyler Lockett. Why do I care about Tyler Lockett? So when I'm looking at those tea leaves, I'm saying like, what are the variables that I can look at without injury, without some other unpredictable narrative, like Josh Jacobs last year? Because who would have thought Josh Jacobs would have been like a very efficient running back that was going to get like 90% of the backfield work? Like, what was in the tea leaves to say that? And I've listened to some guys talk about it, and there were some tea leaves after the Hall of Fame game last year to say that maybe we should have been looking at Josh Jacobs earlier last year, or in the draft than he was. Those are things we're looking at. So another thing to look at that just came up is like Rachaad White that I really liked, but the tea leaves are saying, hey, maybe we should start backing off a league winner type season from Rachaad White because they just lost their center. They've already had offensive line problems. They have Sean Tucker steaming up the board. He's probably going to make the team as an undrafted free agent. Keyshawn Vaughn has third-round draft capital in the final year of his deal. If he doesn't get cut Tuesday, they can go, hey, let's see what we got in this guy. And now Rachaad White goes from a guy that's going to get like 90% of the work with receiving volume to a guy that's going to be splitting time in a bad offense. So the tea leaves said, hey, how much of that 48 overall, $14 on ESPN, and I'm sure Underdog really has him depressed. Because I know, Rachaad White going in the 9th round to be a guy that probably has running back 2 upside is really not a bad play. And I wonder what this is. Ends preseason on high note. But he's still a guy I like. It's just, again, don't hate the player, hate the ADP. But those are the things that we're looking for. Like same thing with like Dameon Pierce. Like I don't like Dameon Pierce's situation this year in Houston, but I realized that he could get up to like a 70% snap share and be literally Josh Jacobs. I mean, he's a guy like Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, are guys that could be this year's Josh Jacobs. You have to have them in all your teams because the tea leaves, if you miss on them, say, okay, what do I get? I get a low end RB2. The tea leaves also say, well, what do I get if I hit? I get running back 3 overall. I get a unicorn. I win my league. So those are the guys that we're looking for when we're looking like how to miss. Other guys to look at like Devontae Smith. Hey, I like Devontae Smith a lot, but how does that offense change for him to be able to pump out enough production to be able to jump him into the category of competing with Cooper Kupp? Like those are the things I have to look at. Like, what are the tea leaves saying? How does this occur? Like Michael Pittman, if you listen to my video a couple days ago, Michael Pittman's a guy. It's like, hey, he gets 8 or 9 targets a game. I don't care how bad Anthony Richardson is. Michael Pittman's going to get 8 or 9 targets a game. Where does that put Michael Pittman in as a receiver at that point? If apples to apples, the preseason carries over, Michael Pittman's getting like 2-3 catches in a half. And now Michael Pittman is really a fringe RB or a wide receiver 1 going at, 80 overall on ESPN. And then if we go try and hunt him down on good old Underdog, he's way, way down here. I'm sure Pickens, like once again, me being perfectly available, wide receiver 39, 75 overall, Michael Pittman. And here's a guy that's like already projecting to be a guy that's going to be like, dare I say, a 10 target a guy game or 10 target a game guy. Where are the tea leaves saying that he's going to be bad? Like, where are the tea leaves saying that he's going to do worse than wide receiver 39? Like those are the things that we're looking at. Like, how are the tea leaves telling me that I'm going to get worse than what I paid for at a guy that's already undervalued? As opposed to, and this is one of the things that like in my auction league, as I got to cut this short, in my auction league, that's why I don't like first round draft picks in my auction league, because those guys can only burn me. They can't win anything for me. Regular snake draft, I kind of have to get saddled with a first round draft pick unless my league rules allow me to trade it. And even in that case, like there are guys that's just like, well, I got to keep the safety blanket because of what they're going to give for me. But like, what am I looking at from the standpoint of where can I get things? Like right now, I know there's a lot of wide receivers that I can get late that have potential to break out. I know there aren't a lot of running backs that have the potential to break out because the tea leaves are not telling me the story of how they get me there. And I need to find these players, because if I hit on my top, my premium round draft picks, once I get a late round guy in there, now I have a team that can't be beat, right? If I miss on one of my early round guys, but I get the right guys on my bench, I can still compete because I'm just replacing a guy that I missed on. And those are things we got to look at, is like how to miss. Like, how do I miss in my draft? Versus like, what am I looking for to hit? And a lot of the tea leaves are there. A lot of the ways that we can walk to those league winners are there. Like, I predicted Cooper Kupp 2 years ago. I just unfortunately had DJ Moore one guy higher than Cooper Kupp on my list. Those are the things that hurt, and those are the things that we have to clarify our process to move forward and go like, how can I not make those mistakes again? Well, like, if I know there's 3 or 4 running backs that have that upside, like those are my bench. Those are the guys that have to be on my bench. Like, James Cooks is on my bench. I can take Travis Etienne off my board. And when I take a guy like Travis Etienne off my board at, was it 30th overall, I can turn around and I can go, well, who's in the area of Travis Etienne that has that ridiculous upside? I'm staring at Calvin Ridley. If I have that pick that should go to a Travis Etienne, now I'm going to go to a Calvin Ridley, because can Calvin Ridley burn me? Absolutely. But does Calvin Ridley have the ability to jump up, 10 spots and win me a league? Also, absolutely, because the tea leaves are there, and those are things I got to start looking for. So anyway, that just kind of sets us up for tomorrow when we talk about the running back dead zone, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. If not, well, I don't actually care. So